Have you ever not done an exercise because it was hurting your joints? Maybe you didn't do lunges because it was bothering your knees, or you didn't do an overhead press because of how it made your shoulders feel. Do all weight training exercises or strength training exercises have to make your joints feel that way? Or is there always going to be some aspect of joint stress or wear and tear that comes along with doing strength training? Or could doing resistance training actually be gentle on your joints and improve the health and function of your joints? On this week's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast, we're going to explore this topic and answer this question for you once and for all. We're going to cue our introduction and we're going to dive right into this conversation. Hey, welcome back, exercisers, to the Exercise is Health podcast, brought to you by Exercise for Life Studios, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset. And the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise that's geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. We're your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
And today we are exploring this idea of using resistance training to actually improve the health of your joints. I mean, how often have you heard, okay, don't do these exercises because it will injure your joints. Don't do these exercises because it'll be stressful for your joints. But what if it didn't have to be that way? What if the exercises that you did could actually make your joints healthier? Well, that's exactly what we want to explore with you today. But before we do, we have an ask. And we want to ask if you have enjoyed any episode that we have ever put out on the Exercise is Health podcast, if you could please pause this episode right now and go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps us show up higher when people are looking for information and podcasts on exercise and information and podcasts on health, but it also legitimizes us as a really high quality podcast in the eyes of many of the guests that we're trying to reach out to say, hey, we would love to have a conversation with you on our podcast. So if you've enjoyed any of the content that we've put out, if you could please take a moment right now, go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating and review, that would be amazing.
That's right. Now, Charlie, I have a question for you.
What's up?
When you think of healthy joints, do you think of resistance training?
Right now, yes, but I don't think most people do. I think when I think of healthy joints, it's usually like joints that I don't notice at all.
That's right. And I think what's very interesting is that if we made like a category of things that you would do to improve the health and function of your joints and a category of things that you would do to not improve the health and function of your joints or maybe put wear and tear on your joints, oddly, resistance training would probably more likely for most people's list go under the category of like wear and tear on the joints. And this is so interesting because probably one of the most potent things that you can do for your joints is to do resistance training in terms of keeping them safe and healthy. And I hear from so many of my clients, so many of our members that say, before I did, our style of training, exercise life method, resistance training, I didn't know resistance training could be gentle on my joints. Honestly, if you said the word like gentle on my joints, you would think of things like Pilates or yoga or things that look gentle from the outside, right? And I think that's kind of the idea where it's like, hey, if it looks gentle from the outside, it must be gentle on my joints. But actually, if we're thinking about exercise, the whole reason why we all exercise, especially if you're not training for the Olympics, you're not training for a marathon or some kind of intense sporting activity, you're training for the result of exercise. You do the exercise not because it's, the exercises you should do, but you do the exercises because the outcome is what you're looking for. You're looking for the changes in strength. You're looking for the changes in your joint function. You're looking for your ability to live your life. Like, your body's not holding you back. And a big part of that is muscles and joints. And so when we think about our exercise and we're thinking about how do I be gentle on my joints, we're actually saying, how do I exercise and not make my joints feel bad? I think that's the big question.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to kind of build off what you're saying, I think a lot of times when we think, like joint-friendly activity, we're thinking like low-impact stuff, like an elliptical or maybe swimming, using the pool, okay? Things that aren't as weight-bearing. And when you're saying resistance training, then that sounds like, oh, well, that's clearly weight bearing. Like that's clearly going to be some, added load to my system, some extra weight on my joints that isn't currently there. Well, that has to be a stress for my joints, right? Actually, no. And it largely depends on how you're going about doing your resistance training. That's kind of what we want to explore with you today.
Right. And I think what's so interesting is that if you were to go to the gym right now, or sign up for a workout program that is not ours, most likely some of those exercises are probably going to hurt your joints because there are very specific principles that when you follow them, then your joints are going to feel better after you work out, more supported, and actually more silent, as weird as that sounds. Because think about it, like last time you woke up and your joints were hurting you, that's when you noticed your joints.
Mm-hmm.
And last time you woke up and you felt nothing, that's when you felt like your joints were feeling good. So the absence of feeling or the presence of extra motion is a sign that your workouts are pushing you in the right direction, not that you have a presence of an achiness or a tightness. So what we're looking for is, can resistance training actually be gentle for your joints? Meaning, can you do resistance training and get all the amazing benefits of resistance training, like building your strength, building your function, being able to live more in your life because your body is more conditioned, more ready to do stuff, and not harass your joints?
Mm-hmm.
That's the question.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Okay, so how would you go about doing this, right? And so again, what most people jump to is like, well, I'm going to do either like low weight or low impact, or maybe using bands or something like that. We're saying, well, hold up for a second. Actually, you can use weights that are really challenging for you. You can, do exercise that from the outside looking in would be like, ooh, like that's going to be stressful for my knees. Oh, my back's not going to like that. Oh, my shoulders are going to be talking to me if I do that. But by changing how you're doing those exercises, like you're saying, Julie, you can build the health and strength and function of your muscles, which will then better support your joints to be able to move better, to be healthier, to be able to function better, and as such, make your system overall more resilient to the things that you want to do in life. So how do you go about doing this? Well, the first thing that you need to keep in mind is your range of motion, your symptom-free range of motion. See, a lot of times when we think about, oh, this exercise is stressful for my joints, let's take an overhead press or a shoulder press, okay? We say, okay, well, it bugs my shoulders to do a shoulder press. Okay, cool. What part of the motion bugs your shoulders? More times than not, it's not the entire motion. More times than not, it's like, well, I have to have my arm plastered to my side. Otherwise, any, degree of separation between my arm and my rib cage, all of a sudden, immediately, my shoulder starts hurting. Sometimes that's the case, usually not. Usually it's like, oh, when it gets out to about 30 degrees or 45 degrees or 90 degrees, or maybe even, higher, like, hey, like my arm is coming up closer to my ear. That's when I start to notice, oh yeah, now it's bugging my shoulders. So the thing about it is if there's any point between like plastered to your ribs and, away from that, where you feel like, okay, yeah, like I can move and it doesn't bother me, then now all of a sudden you have the opportunity to challenge the muscles that would create that motion, to help get those muscles to support your joints better, and do so in a way that isn't bothersome for your joints. But we need to kind of separate ourselves from the emotional ties of, well, I need to do full range of motion, or because this isn't using, as much range of motion as I think I should be using, there aren't going to be any benefits. The quicker you can remove those emotional ties and just stay within the amount of motion that feels good for your body, the sooner you will be able to start building the health and function of your muscles to be able to better support your joints.
That's right. I can't tell you how many times people are like, oh my gosh, I just don't do lunges because they hurt my knees, or I don't run because aren't they bad on your knees? Like it's like a unifying statement. Like everyone says these things. But the problem is that when we leave out exercises, those joints are left to be weaker and more vulnerable to injury, and like less ready to do the stuff you want to do in your life. So like when you're kneeling down trying to do your gardening, it's not a question of why your arms started really, really getting tired, because you never work your arms. Or so what Charlie is saying is really key here. And if you are new here, this is going to be something that you need to really change your mindset. And when you do, you're going to see so much benefit. And if you're not new here, you're going to be like, yes, this is what we always talk about. Your exercise should be your full range of motion. Not what's in the textbook, not what the teacher's doing, not what Charlie and I do on our membership when you see our videos and stuff. It's never that. It's always what's right for your body. And the first way that you know it's right for your body is if you are checking your range of motion and finding your symptom-free range of motion. Mm-hmm. So there should be no tugging, pulling, tightness, stretching. A lot of times people like to work through the stretch because they feel like it's good. Just leave it out. All you should ever feel, the only symptom, I guess we could say it's symptom, you should ever feel is muscles squeezing, mm-hmm. right? The muscle is working. So when you're thinking, okay, how do I make exercise and resistance training specifically, gentle on my joints, we're looking for your symptom-free range of motion. And just as Charlie said, the more that you can say, okay, I don't care what everyone else is doing. I'm just going to look for my symptom-free range of motion, which means that you might leave out the top edge. You might leave out the bottom 3 inches. You might leave out the middle and have to do 2 different exercises doing the top and the bottom. Wherever you're having symptoms, you leave that part out. You don't do that part. And actually, the more and more that you respect your body in that way, meaning you exercise where your body says it's okay, and you don't exercise where your body's saying it's not okay, the more motion your body will give you. And it's actually better motion, in my opinion, because you're inviting your body to do it, and you're saying, hey, we're only going to do it when you're ready, and we're going to be strong in this motion, rather than your brain like forcing it because you're saying, well, it hurts only a little bit, so I'll just keep pushing through. Just make it not hurt at all.
Exactly. That's a really, really key concept. One of my favorite aspects of doing this podcast with you every week is hearing how often you make up words on the fly and just like, insert them into like normal conversation. It'd be like so hard playing against you in Scrabble because I feel like you'd constantly be making up words and I have to constantly fact check.
I would have him make up a word, full definition.
Toppage definitely is not a word.
All the conjugation, the toppage. Oh, the toppage. Oh my! I was like, what motion? What? Okay, here's the thing. It's not about what words are correct. It's about what words communicate.
I get that.
Do you want to know what other word is amazing?
It just flows out of you so seamlessly.
I love that you said that because I didn't even realize.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so once you know that you're saying it within your symptom-free range of motion, something that's going to really aid you with this is making sure that the areas of your body that you want to move are the only areas of your body that you are moving. Okay, we call this controlling for your moving and non-moving segments. Now, a lot of the world calls this form. Again, this form has a lot of like stipulations and stigmas around it, like good form, bad form. There's all this labeling around it. And all we're saying, you need to know what areas of your body you want to move and what areas of your body you don't want to move. And if you can control those 2 aspects, the moving parts and the non-moving parts, you're going to be much more likely to be able to stay within your symptom-free range of motion. So this means when you're doing something like a shoulder press, you're not moving through your trunk in order to try to get your arm up overhead. When you are doing something like a lunge, again, you're not like folding forward from your trunk or anything like that in order to try to drop down lower, whatever it is, right? So you need to understand like what areas of your body you want moving with the exercise and what areas of your body you don't want moving. And then within that, making sure that, again, you're staying within your symptom-free range of motion.
Charlie, the number one way that I think people kind of make their muscles not work as hard as they should be or be less specific is by moving too many things at one time. Mm-hmm. And I think there's an appeal to this because you're like, well, look at all this motion I'm doing. It's amazing. Or you get more motion or you get more reps, right? Because you're like, this should be a shoulder exercise, but now my trunk is helping. So now I can do more because my shoulders are tired, but at least my trunk is still working, right? My torso. So by controlling the moving and non-moving parts, you're going to work the areas that you want to work and leave out the areas to be left for later, right? And that is really this is also really important in terms of teaching your body how to move certain areas, especially when they're not so good at moving in those areas. So let's use the example of the overhead press that we keep working on. So lifting stuff over your head or reaching overhead is a really important motion that a lot of people lose with age for a couple reasons. Number one, we all lose large ranges of motion the less we practice it. And we don't practice that motion a lot. I mean, the last time I think I did it in regular life is that we keep our toaster up really high. And so I reach up really high to get the toaster. And so if I didn't have that motion, I don't know the last time I would have lifted really high, except for like when I do like the Simba move with my kids, right? So
exactly.
A lot of us just don't practice it. And so when we're in the gym and we're practicing these motions, right, an overhead press motion, the more specific we can be with, hey, I'm here to strengthen my shoulders. I'm not here to just launch the weights up and down. I'm not here to do a shoulder torso combo move. I'm just here to really challenge the shoulders. the more specific and more benefit your shoulders are going to get. And so you're going to be able to keep that motion for longer. And that's a big part about exercise, is keeping the function that we have and improving the function that we have so that we can reach further, move more, be able to do larger motion. So really controlling the moving and non-moving parts as almost like unappealing as it sounds, because you might have to do less reps and you might have to do less motion. The more you respect that, the more benefit you're going to get from your workouts.
Exactly. And that's really what it comes down to, is like, first and foremost, okay, making sure that your workouts aren't making your joints worse by stressing them more. And then secondly, making sure that you're getting the most that you can out of the effort that you're putting in, the time that you're putting in from your workouts. So like, okay, we want to make sure that you're not making your joints worse by trying to move too far. And we want to make sure that you can get more from your workouts by like actually targeting the muscles that you're trying to target by controlling for your moving and non-moving segments. Then the next step after that is to make sure that you are moving slowly. Okay, this hits both. One, making sure that you're not stressing your joints, and two, making sure that you're getting more benefit from the exercise. Okay, because when you move slowly, you're going to be less likely to violate your range of motion. Okay, it's kind of like, hey, if you are driving at 65 miles an hour and then you have to stop on a dime, that's going to be a lot more difficult to do than if you are driving at 15 miles an hour and have to stop on a dime, right? Like, we use this school zone analogy where it's like, hey, if you're driving through a school zone and the posted speed limit is 35 miles an hour, except when children are present, then it's 20 miles an hour. But it's a Tuesday, and it's 3 p.m. and there are all these little kids darting around. Are you like, oh, well, the speed limit says I can drive 15, 20 miles an hour, so that's just what I'm going to do. It's like, no, you're going to creep ahead only as fast as you're going to be able to stop.
Yes.
In case one of those little kids or, a puppy or, a parent has to come, darting out in the street you have to be able to stop on a dime, right? And so that is the idea and the mindset that we want you to employ when you are doing your resistance training, is you move as quickly only as you can. You move only as fast as you can stop on a dime. Like, stop on a moment's notice, just like you'd have to be able to hit the brake, and there's no kind of jiggling, bouncing, anything like that of your vehicle. If somebody runs out in front of you, you have to be able to stop at a moment's notice when you're doing your resistance training.
Now, when we're thinking about being gentle on your joints, a lot of the things that are in gentle categories do have the slow motion.
That's true.
Which I think is great.
Mm-hmm.
But the big thing here, when we're thinking about resistance training, is that, remember, resistance training is about the outcome that we get from it. And the best way for us to bias our outcome to being positive is to be able to observe when we need to start and stop exercises. And if you're moving slowly, your body's going to be able to send you messages of when you're done, when you're starting to feel other things, when a symptom is coming up. Because remember, we're staying in symptom-free range motion. So sometimes symptoms come up halfway through a set, right? So if you're moving slowly, you're going to sense when that happens, when it happens, rather than, 3 reps later. So thinking about moving slowly is one of the best ways to be gentle on your joints, because you're going to be able to observe when your joints are needing to communicate or tell you when to stop.
Yes, absolutely. And that leads us right into kind of this fourth aspect of how to make resistance training super gentle for your joints and make sure that it's not harassing your joints, strengthening your muscles, getting the muscle benefit, which ultimately will lead to the joint benefit. And that is, while you're doing your exercise, you want to focus on squeezing the muscles that you're trying to work, okay? You don't want to shut off your brain. You don't want to shut off your mind and just kind of zone out and, just let your music carry you through the workout. You really want to connect with all the different areas of your body that you're challenging at the time that you're challenging them, okay? So when you're doing your biceps curls, really focus on your biceps. When you are doing your shoulder press, really focused on, squeezing the muscles of your shoulders. When you're doing your lunges, really focused on squeezing through your glutes or squeezing through your quads. And just that alone not only will force you to move more slowly, which is going to help you be able to stay within your range of motion. It will also get more signal being sent to those muscles, which will help you get better results from the workouts. It will make sure that you are not that you are able to better control for your moving and non-moving segments, just simply by maintaining that mind-muscle connection while you do each of your exercises.
Charlie, I really feel like if you are resistance training to build the health and function of your body, which is the goal of what we try to teach, your exercise should always be gentle on your joints, meaning you should always leave your workouts with your joints feeling more mobile, more flexible, and less symptomy, right? Like, we never expect your joints to be perfect going into a workout because we all have stuff going on. We have stressors, we have body stressors, we have muscle issues, we have joint issues, we have arthritis, all these things. But these 4 principles are always how you're going to is always how you're going to strategize to make sure that your workouts are gentle on your joints. And although resistance training does not often fall into this gentle joint category because a lot of us don't feel like it looks like some kind of gentle motion or flowy motion like we want to see for like a gentle exercise, it is the best way to keep your joints strong and supported, because joints thrive on having this large motion, smooth motion, and also it's how the inside of your joints will also stay healthy. So making sure that you're doing your resistance training, you're following these 4 principles, and making sure that you're doing this regularly. This is the best way to not only be gentle on your joints, but also have your joints build up some resiliency because the muscles around them are stronger, protecting them from whatever you're going to do with the activities in your life.
Yeah, Julie, I really love those points because when it comes to joint health, there's really 2 things that your joints need in order to be healthy and strong. Number 1, they need to be able to move. Okay, joint motion is critical for their overall health. And number 2 is they need force going through them. Now, a lot of times we think about these things like, oh, well, if I'm doing, my full range of motion, just, like stretching or doing mobility work, like, okay, that's all great, but you still need the force going through it. And when we think about force going through our joints, that's when we often think, okay, well, I don't want to, load my body or anything like that. Here's the thing. When it comes to the health and function of your joints, the number 1 thing that is going to promote the health and function of your joints is the health and function of your muscles, okay? Because your muscles are going to be the things that move your joints. Your muscles are going to be the things that put force through your joints in response to whatever demands are on them from, from lifting weights or just moving throughout your day or whatever it is, okay? So doing resistance training in a way that promotes the health and function of your muscles will also help to promote the health and function of your joints. And doing resistance training in a way that is respectful to the health and function of your joints will make sure that the exercise that you're doing is not degrading the health and function of your joints. So you are not making your joints worse because you're being respectful for them. At the same time, you're also building up their health and function through building up the health and function of your muscles and also making them more resilient because now you have stronger muscles to help support your joints. So it's really like wins across the board when you start to implement these steps that we discussed
Total
today.
win, Charlie.
Total win.
Okay, so remember, whenever you're thinking about your exercise, it's always about what is the outcome of the exercise. So I think so often we think about what am I doing in my exercise, which is important, but it's also important to think about how do I bias what I'm doing so that I leave the way I want to leave, right? Because when we're exercising for health and function, we're exercising for the outcome. So how am I going to exercise today to make sure that my joints feel great right when I'm done? My joints feel better tomorrow. My joints are more functional, more flexible, more mobile. All the things we want our joints to be more silent, right? We don't want our joints talking to us. But when they are, we need to respect them. So think about these 4 principles next time you're doing your resistance training to make your resistance training a questionable harassment to your joints to now amazing and supportive and strengthening to your joints.
So if you're looking for some guidance on how to go about implementing these principles within your workouts, the program that we'd like to suggest for you within the Exercise for Life membership is called Healthy Muscles, Healthy Joints. And throughout that entire program, we teach you how to do your strength training in a way that is not only respectful for your joints, but actually builds the health and function of your joints through strengthening your muscles and building the health and function of your muscles. So if you'd like to get started, all you have to do is go to www.exerciseforlifestudios.com/membership. When you sign up either as a monthly member or a premium member, you will get access to that Healthy Muscles, Healthy Joints program. And from there, you will also get access to hundreds of other workouts that we have all designed to help you improve the health and function of not only your muscles, your joints, and your body overall right from home.
Okay, I have a spoiler. Okay, in less than a week, a brand new program is actually going to go into the membership. And I don't know if we plan to announce this right now, but we're announcing it because I'm excited about it. It's called Gentle Muscle Wake Up. And actually, if you have been wondering about like your joints relative to your workouts, this is going to be a really good program. It's another kind of skills program, but more of just like, hey, wake up your muscles, reconnect with your muscles, and really feel out your full range of motion. They're quick 15-minute gentle workouts that you can do like on a day off, when you're traveling, before or after a workout, to replace your stretching, wherever it fits in. But once you get the feel of it, it kind of has this like Pilates feel in terms of like, hey, we're exploring full ranges of motion in that way, but we're being a lot more respectful to how your body anatomically moves.
So when you sign up for the membership, you will also be getting access to that program as soon as it releases on Monday, July 3rd. So again, the URL is www.exerciseforlifestudios.com/membership to get access to those programs as well as everything else within the membership. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that is concerned about starting to do resistance training because of how it's either made their joints feel in the past or how they believe it's going to make their joints feel if they start up now? Share this episode with them so they can understand the key principles that they need to include with each of their workouts to make sure that their workouts are building the health and function of the joints as well as building the health and function of the muscles and not stressing out their joints. While you're online, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps people find our podcast when they're looking for information on exercise and they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us a 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.